Welcome everyone, this is Zon with Repo Products. Today's video is on what's new in Autodesk Revit 2020. I'm going to run through the PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the more interesting new features of Revit 2020, and then we'll jump into the software. So some of the new features that I thought was interesting to show would be the ability to bring a PDF file into Revit now. This has been a long-term request, and we can now do so. And I'll talk about the pros and cons of what we have. We also can create elliptical walls, and I remember from a long time ago working with AutoCAD and other software, creating elliptical walls was somewhat difficult, and now you can do so in the Revit software. We also have a new feature called Path of Travel that will help you with understanding what is the linear distance from one spot to the exit way within your building. We also have the ability to tag, schedule, and view and set up a filter for the elevation of an entity, and we'll get into that as well. We'll track and edit scope box parameters within a view list so that you can consistently make your views look correct. And then lastly, we can take legends and copy paste them across sheets, whereas in prior we can drag and drop the legend views into multiple sheets. This time we can copy paste and place it exactly in the same spot. So here, when we talk about taking a PDF and bringing it into Revit, it comes directly into the software. It is obviously connected to BIM 360 and desktop support if you need to. And you can actually snap to the geometry inside the view to help you draw. Being able to create the elliptical walls is pretty straightforward within the Draw Contextual panel. And obviously we can switch it from one type of wall to another. We have Path of Travel that automatically draws the path between 2 points. It creates an entity and you can look at the metadata of that entity, and it understands specific obstacles as well, and then you can schedule and tag that data if you need to. You have image and PDF improvements as well, which I didn't list, but it's just really something about looking at more of the information that's coming out of the image file. Here we're talking about the tagging of an entity and using a filter tool that adjusts for the elevation of the object. Here we talk about the scope box parameter and being able to have it as a column within your view list so you can control the views a little bit tighter. And then, like I said earlier, being able to copy paste the legend view onto multiple sheets in the same location. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the software. So here I am in Autodesk Revit 2020, and what you're looking at is a PDF file that has been inserted into this Revit default project. If we select it, we'll get a contextual tab, and PDFs are brought in and treated as images. So you can enable snaps so you can draw and it will find endpoint, midpoint, quad, things like that. You can click Manage Images and it will list the Manage Image window. And then you can do different things like add more images, delete, reload, place an instance, or reload as well. Whereas reload from is from a different location. Because I select this PDF file, I can move it to the front or bring it to the back, or bring it forward or bring it back. So how do we go about bringing a PDF file into Revit? I'm going to start with a brand new file. I'm going to use the architectural template file. And we'll head over to the Insert tab of the ribbon and click PDF. We'll go get our PDF file and we click Open. It opens up the Import PDF window, and if there are more than one sheet, you can specify what page to look at, and then you can also specify what resolution as well, and it figures out what size the paper is based upon the PDF file. Once I click OK, it's going to grab that data and it's going to allow me to bring it in, just like I bring in an image into Revit. So you have to give it some time for it to process the data. And when you place it, you're just left clicking to place it. Depending on how big the PDF file is or how detailed it is, and the DPI resolution that you specify will dictate how long it takes to bring it in, as well as the speed of your machine. So I'm just going to place it. And once it's placed, you'll see that X. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see. And so you have the X and you have the 4 corners of the image, if you will now. It's not a PDF file, it's treated as an image. I have it selected, and you'll see over here under the properties, it has a width and a height, and it has a horizontal and a vertical scale, and the proportions are locked. Typically, when we bring a PDF file into, say, AutoCAD, we have to double check the scale in the vertical and the horizontal. So you would want to do the same thing here as well. Let's go ahead and zoom into an area. And I'll use my distance command, and I'll measure from here to here. Now, if you look very carefully, it doesn't want to snap to the endpoints. What you need to do first is select the PDF file, click Enable Snaps. Now that that's done, it's highlighted, as you can see here. And now if I do the measurement, you can see it'll snap to it. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit and click this point to this point. And it says 3 feet. Let's do the next one. Here to here. And we're off by 5/64 of an inch, which is negligible. Now, we also typically check vertical as well, just to make sure. And so I'm going to click up here and click down here. And you may need to zoom in a little bit. And I've got 28 feet. So from a scaling perspective, it looks like it's coming in pretty much right on. From there, I can go ahead and, since I have snaps enabled, I can just start drawing my content. So I'm going to use the wall command and use basic wall for now. We'll tell it to go to level 2 and say finish face exterior. And as you can see, I can use my spacebar to flip the orientation. And I'll have chain turned on. And you can see I'm starting to draw the walls that I need. And I'm just going to draw a small area so you can see. If we look at this in 3D, you'll see the walls are created. Now, because this PDF file that's imported is treated as an image, it isn't something that is visible in all views. It's only in the view that you put it in. So that's why we can't see the PDF file in the 3D view. So that's the first new feature in Revit 2020 that people will like, because we can now bring in PDF files. And I know lots of people don't have the CAD files for their work. They have the PDF files. And it's kind of a bear to go from AutoCAD to Revit sometimes. Let me go ahead and close this file. The next new feature are elliptical walls. So I have some drawn here. And if we head over to a plan view, this is pretty straightforward. All you're really doing is starting the wall command, going into the contextual draw panel, and there's an ellipse command right here. Click it, and the command line in the lower left corner will say click to enter ellipse center. Obviously, we want to pick the kind of wall we want to work with. So I'll do a generic 8-inch masonry. Click to place a center, and as you can see, I can either use my mouse and move to specify the distance, or I can type in a value, and it will give me the ability to place it, the first point as being either the major or the minor axis. And then as I move my mouse away from where I was clicking initially, it'll start to stretch the ellipse. And then I can specify the other axis direction, and I'm just going to left click. In doing so, I get an elliptical set of walls that is 15 feet in one direction and 8 feet in the other direction. If we look at it in 3D, this is what we get. And just because it's a wall, obviously we can push and pull the ends of the walls and adjust the top and the bottom. One of the things I did notice working and playing with it earlier is that depending on the kind of wall that you're working with, if it has sweeps or reveals, it may have some weird results like this, where it says, could not create integral wall reveal for the wall instance or the sweep. So if we zoom in, we can see how that end of the wall sweep stops short. And even if I look at, for example, this wall, this is going up to level 2. If I take this one and make it go up to level 2 with a no offset and push it back up to where it's supposed to be, it's still going to fail on me here. And that just seems to be an interesting issue, which I haven't had a chance to look deeper into. So just be aware that when you're working with elliptical walls, you may run into some issues with some sweeps and reveals. Let's go ahead and close this file. And let's take up the next one. This one is in reference to the path of travel command. Now, if we look very carefully here, I've got 3 path of travel lines already drawn, and they're this greenish color right here. And if I select it and go to the properties, you'll see it says line style, path of travel lines, which means it's a line type that you're working with. It's a style. It has embedded parametric data, and it has what host level it's set at, how long it takes to go from one point to another point, and how long that travel line path is. If we want to, we can head over to the Annotate tab, tag by category, and tag that. And it'll ask if you want to include that tag. Since mine is not loaded, I'm going to click yes, and head over to my Imperial Library, Annotations, and look for Path of Travel tag, which is right here. Click Open, it comes in, and now I can click to place it. If we zoom in, we can see that it's a tag, obviously, that I can move and I can adjust, and it gives me the length and how fast that it takes time-wise. If we select the tag and go to the family and look at that particular label, that one says length, and the other one says time. And that's all it really is. How do we go ahead and tell the software, I need you to create this path? I'm going to go ahead and delete it right now. And if I go to the Analyze tab of the ribbon, the path of travel command is right here under a panel called Route Analysis. If I click this little arrow for these settings, I can see how the Revit software is behaving and what is it considered as obstacles or not, even when they're visible. And so whatever you have checked in here, it's going to say do not consider these model category objects as obstacles. In other words, they don't exist there, just keep walking through. Okay, and you might have a situation where you may have hard furniture like millwork. Even though millwork isn't listed here, you might have some kind of hard type of furniture that is immovable, and so you might want to place a check mark for furniture here. Okay, those are the settings. If I click the actual command path of travel, the command line will tell me pick a path of travel start point. So I'm going to pick down here, and then I'm going to move my mouse and say I need you to go out to here. Click. What it does is it analyzes what you've created as a model, and it says, okay, I can literally walk or run from that point straight to through the opening, and from there straight through to that other point that you said to go to. And so because of that, it puts in that particular path. Again, if I go through and I tag it, I'm now specifying that tag, and it still shows 51 feet 9 inches and 12 seconds. That is the path of travel command. Now, unfortunately, what I noticed though is that if you look at this model in 3D, the path of travel is not a 3D model object. So I can't see it in the 3D view. And what we did earlier was we said, give me a path of travel from this workout area in the corner, running through the door and back out to these doors here. And we don't see that. So the path of travel isn't a 3D model object that you can work with so you can visibly see. However, I did create what's known as an egress line. And this is a separate video that I created on my YouTube channel. You can look it up. And this egress line is a generic model. And if I edit that family, you'll see that there are objects in here that are model text that are arrayed along a line-based family. And so when I create it and I put it into the software, I can actually draw from one end to the other end or from point to point and give me the actual line work that I need, and also the 3D model text that shows it's an egress line. I also created a tag that pulls out that linear distance. And then lastly, you can schedule it. So I scheduled all the egress lines, and the total length is showing up at the bottom as well as the individual lengths. Now, let's go ahead and close these files. And we'll take a look at the next one, which is looking at the tags and filters for the elevation of an entity. This particular Revit model is a simple one. It's nothing more than a vertical wall. And I have some plumbing fixtures here that are placed, and some of them are placed dead zero on the level. And some of them are placed a specific height off the floor. For example, these urinals. This one was purposely placed 4 foot higher. So that way we can see that this tag that we have that we can work with is called a elevation tag, and it's called elevation from level. Now, the interesting thing is this. The elevation from level tag is category specific. So you need to create the tag for each type of category of entity that you want. So that way it tags each one individually, or you can create a multi-category tag to do the same thing. If I drill into that particular tag family and select that label, looking at the label, there's a new built-in parameter called elevation from level, and that's what it's reading here. And once it reads it, it extracts the data from the entity and displays it. From the perspective of setting up a filter, if I open up Visibility Graphics dialog box and we expand it a little bit, we can head over to Filters. And I created one called Plumbing Fixture Elevation Filter. And I gave it a color of red and a weight of 5. If I edit that particular filter, we can see it's called Plumbing Fixture Elevation Filter. It applies to the category of objects that I want, which is, in this case, plumbing fixtures. And I've told it to say, have the filter rule set up where it's looking at the elevation from level parameter. And if it's greater than a specific height, then apply that to that particular view and highlight those objects. And there you go. So it's just another way to have a tag that defines the height of an entity or displays the height of the entity that you're working with. Some people want to be able to see that maybe in a ceiling plan or in a plumbing plan. The next is scope box and being able to use them in a view list to control the visibility of things. I'm going to head over to the plan view of this model, and I've got 4 scope boxes here that you can see, one for north, east, south, and west. And if we head over to, say, the view list, and we tile our views, we can see all 4 of them here in the 3D view. So I'm going to close this plan view and tile my views again. I'm going to purposely open up the elevations. For example, east and north and south and west. Now I'm going to tile the views again so you can see a lot more views. And if I head over here to my view list, you can see that I have a column called Scope Box. And I have the elevation view east on a sheet called A102 called Sections and Elevations. As it stands now, north, west, and south elevation views are not tied to their scope boxes. So if you watch very carefully for north, which is here, west, which is here, and south, which is here, so I'll close east since I don't really need it. I'll go inside the list under scope box and switch the north to the north scope box, and you'll see how the view changes. The west, and you'll see how that changes, and then the south. So it's just an interesting way for you to control the visibility of the limits of the view to keep things looking the way you want them to look. If we look at this model in 3D and we look at the scope box that we're dealing with, let me close these other views for us. You'll notice that for this scope box, if I select it, I can push and pull the faces of the scope box to define the limits and the size of the scope box in all four sides. But if I go to the properties of the scope box, there's no data here that defines the width, the height, the width, the height, the depth, and so on. So it isn't something that you can control via numbers like measurements wise. But that would be neat. That would be very interesting because that way I can select all four of these scope boxes and tell it to be a vertical height of an exact distance. That would be neat to see. Let's go ahead and close that file. So the last one is the legend view. And so I have a legend view over here called sample legend. And if I open it up, it just looks like this. It could be any kind of legend. It could be a door legend, a window legend, a key plan legend, an area of work legend, whatever you want it to be. I'm going to open up a 201 sheet, and you can see that in this A201 sheet, I have that legend placed here. If I open up another view, say cover sheet, obviously I can left click and drag and drop that sample legend view onto the sheet, and I can place it wherever I want. But in this case, I don't want to do that. I want to place it in the exact same spot as the other sheet. If I open up A101 Finish Floor Level 1 sheet, there's some space here. I want to place it here as well. And then let's try, let's look at A105. Okay, so let's say, for example, in my A201 sheet, I want to take this legend view and propagate it across these other sheets. All I need to do is select it, use my copy to clipboard command, and use paste align to selected views. And in this case, I want my A100 cover sheet. I want my A101 Finish Floor Level 1. I'm holding the Control key down. And my A105. Click OK, and that information gets pushed to the other sheets. It doesn't take long at all. And so now it's in the exact same spot. So for this particular sheet, I would want to move my view so it looks like it's not interfering. My A101 looks okay. And my gross and rentable areas, these two I'll have to move up a little bit just to keep it out of the way and it doesn't touch the legend view. So that's having a new 2020 feature of being able to copy paste the legend view across multiple sheets in the exact same location. And with that, those are all the really neat looking new features of Revit 2020 I wanted to show to you. I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you very much for watching.